Hi, my wonderful family. Welcome back to Sammy Stories. May the Almighty pour His endless mercy and favor upon your hearts, and wrap your souls in a peace that never fades. May every woman walk like a queen, clothed in grace. May every man lead with kindness and truth, and may every child grow strong in the light of love. I pray that your homes echo with laughter, your nights rest in calm, and your days bloom with blessings beyond measure. Wherever life takes you, may God's presence walk beside you. May His love fill your path, and His angels guard your every step. Through every storm and every sunrise, may your faith stay strong, your spirit stay gentle, and your heart remain pure. If your heart is true, like this video. If your love is real, subscribe, comment, share, and follow. Because here on Sammy Stories, every tale is more than words. It's a reflection of faith, love, and destiny. Now, sit back, open your heart, and let this story remind you that kindness has the power to change everything. The morning sun tried to pierce through a restless London sky, its golden light scattered by clouds heavy with rain. The streets glistened like glass, and the air carried that gentle chill that comes just before another downpour. Ava Morgan hurried along the narrow path leading to Kingston University, her backpack slung over one shoulder, her mind racing through the list of things she hadn't done. Assignments, rent, tuition, and the long shift she'd just finished at a tiny diner that paid barely enough to survive. Yet even in her exhaustion, there was peace in her spirit, a quiet faith that whispered, "Keep going." As she passed the university gates, her eyes caught the faint movement of someone sitting by the stone wall. A man in torn clothes, his hands rough, his face shadowed by a hood, his eyes lowered as if the weight of the world had pressed him into silence. Most students walked past him without a glance. Some crossed the street to avoid him. But Ava stopped. Something in her heart wouldn't let her move on. She reached into her lunch bag and took out the only meal she had that day, a sandwich wrapped carefully in paper. Then she walked up to him and spoke softly. "Excuse me, would you like something to eat?" The man looked up slowly. His eyes, deep, calm, and strangely captivating, met hers. For a brief second, she forgot the noise around her. There was something different in those eyes. Not despair, but a quiet strength, the kind that comes from a life that's seen both heaven and hell. He hesitated, then spoke, his voice low but clear. "Are you sure you want to give that away?" Ava nodded, a small smile warming her tired face. "God's been good to me," she said. "I can't walk past someone who needs help." The man's lips curved slightly. He accepted the sandwich, holding it with an almost sacred gentleness. "Thank you," he murmured. "Most people don't even look at me." Ava smiled again and turned to leave, unaware that her simple act of kindness had just rewritten the story of her own life. The man, Liam Hayes, watched her disappear into the sea of students. The billionaire heir to Hayes Industries, a man who owned half the skyline she walked under, now sat disguised as a beggar, searching for something money had never been able to buy: sincerity. For weeks, he had wandered the city in silence, watching how people treated the unseen, the forgotten, the broken. And then she came. A girl with nothing to give but her heart. As the first drops of rain began to fall again, Liam smiled faintly. Under that grey London sky, two souls from opposite worlds had just collided by divine design. The rain had stopped, leaving the air damp and cool. London was wrapped in that quiet stillness that comes after a storm, the kind that feels like a deep breath before the world moves again. Ava Morgan sat by the library window later that evening, her eyes drifting from the open book in front of her to the wet cobblestones outside. She couldn't stop thinking about the man by the gate. Something about him had stayed with her. Not his appearance, not his silence, but the calm in his eyes when he said thank you. It was as if he wasn't thanking her for the food, but for seeing him, for acknowledging that he existed. She whispered a quiet prayer. God, wherever he is tonight, please keep him safe. And then, without knowing why, she smiled. The next morning, Ava walked through the same gate, half expecting the man to be gone. But there he was, sitting in the same place, head bowed, as if nothing in the world had changed. This time, she didn't hesitate. She walked over, carrying a warm cup of tea she had bought with her last few coins. I thought you might need this, she said softly. The man looked up, his lips curving into a faint smile. You again, he said. You shouldn't spend your money on me. Ava shook her head. It's not about money, she replied. It's about heart. He stared at her for a long moment, as if he was trying to memorize the way she said those words. Then he nodded slowly and took the cup. Thank you, again. She sat on the low wall beside him. For a while, they said nothing, just listened to the hum of the city, the laughter of passing students, the chirp of pigeons on wet pavement. Then she asked, What's your name? He hesitated. Liam. And yours? He added after a pause. Ava. He repeated it under his breath. Ava. It sounded like a prayer on his tongue. Days turned into weeks. Every morning, Ava would stop by that same spot before class, leaving him something, a sandwich, tea, sometimes a small note with a verse or a quote. And every day, Liam found himself waiting, not for the food, but for the sound of her footsteps, the light of her smile, the faith in her words. He hadn't felt this alive in years. Beneath the dirt-stained clothes and unkempt hair, he carried the weight of an empire, a company his father had built, a fortune that had lost its meaning. But sitting beside Ava, listening to her talk about dreams and struggles, he began to understand something money had never taught him. The beauty of simplicity. One afternoon, as they sat together watching the clouds roll in, Ava asked softly, Liam, have you ever loved anyone? He looked down, caught off guard. Love, a word he'd avoided for years, buried under contracts and corporate walls. I thought I did once, he replied quietly. But maybe I was only in love with the idea of love. Ava smiled faintly. Maybe love isn't meant to be perfect. Maybe it's meant to be honest. He turned toward her, and for the first time, he saw her not just as a kind stranger, but as someone who could see through him completely. In that quiet moment, the rain began again, soft and silver, falling between them like a promise. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to, because somewhere in the stillness of that London afternoon, a friendship had become something deeper, something neither of them dared to name. As Ava walked home that evening, she whispered, Lord, I don't know what you're doing in my life right now, but whatever it is, I trust you. And somewhere behind her, under the streetlights, Liam Hayes, the billionaire in disguise, watched her disappear into the glow of the city, his heart no longer hidden behind the mask of a beggar. London woke in silence that morning. The clouds hung low, brushing the tops of glass towers, and the city streets glistened from a night of rain. Ava hurried across the campus courtyard, her umbrella half broken, her heart oddly light. It had been 2 months since she first met Liam. 2 months of quiet talks, laughter in the cold, and shared prayers whispered over steaming cups of tea. But when she reached the gate, he wasn't there. The worn spot where he always sat was empty.
No blanket.
No cup.
No trace.
Her breath caught. Maybe he left early, she murmured to herself. But something in her chest tightened, a quiet unease she couldn't explain. The next day, he was gone again. And the day after that. By the fourth day, the silence became unbearable. Ava asked around, the security guard, the shopkeeper across the street, the woman who sold flowers by the gate. No one had seen him. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. That night, she sat by her window, staring out at the city lights, her heart heavy with unanswered questions. She whispered a prayer into the stillness. God, if he's safe, let me know. And if he's not, guide me to where he is. Her voice broke. Please don't let kindness be the last thing I gave him. Days turned to weeks. Final exams came and went. The world kept moving. But a part of Ava remained frozen in that empty space by the gate. Sometimes she thought she saw him. A shadow on a street corner. A figure in the crowd with familiar eyes. But every time she reached out, it was someone else. Her friends told her to let it go. Maybe he moved on, they said. But deep down, Ava felt it. That their story wasn't finished. Love, after all, doesn't vanish. It lingers, waiting for the right moment to return. One cold evening, she stopped by the chapel near her university. The same chapel where she often prayed between classes. The candles flickered, casting soft gold light across the pews. She knelt, folding her hands. Lord, I don't know where he is. But if our paths were meant to cross for a reason, please show me what that reason was. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She didn't pray for him to come back. She prayed for peace. The kind that doesn't depend on answers, but on trust. As she left the chapel, the sound of thunder echoed faintly in the distance. The city lights shimmered against the wet pavement. And somewhere, in the backseat of a black luxury car, a man watched her quietly through the rain. His face was clean now. His clothes tailored. The scruff was gone, the suit perfect. But his eyes, those eyes were the same. Liam Hayes sat in silence, watching the girl who had fed him when he had nothing. The girl who saw his soul before his status. He wanted to step out, to tell her everything, to say that the beggar was gone because the billionaire had returned. But something in him whispered, not yet. Because to love her, he first had to make sure she could stand in his world. A world filled with cameras, lies, and gold-plated masks. He whispered softly, soon, Ava, soon. And the car drove away into the mist. That night, Ava dreamed of him. Of rain, of a quiet smile, and a promise she couldn't quite remember. The story was far from over. But destiny was already moving. It had been 6 months since Liam disappeared. 6 months since Ava last sat by that iron gate, still half expecting to hear his voice say, "You shouldn't spend your money on me." Life had moved on, but her heart hadn't. She'd graduated now, a young woman standing on the edge of a new world, her dreams in one hand and her memories in the other. Money was still tight, but her faith had only grown stronger. Each morning, she whispered her same prayer. God, guide my steps, even when I don't understand them. One afternoon, as the city shimmered in a rare streak of sunlight, Ava was invited by her best friend to a charity gala at the Ritz London. I can't afford something like that, she laughed. But her friend smiled. You don't need to. I've got a ticket. Come. You deserve a little sparkle. So she went. She borrowed a simple cream dress from a neighbor, fixed her hair herself, and whispered a nervous prayer before stepping out the door. The ballroom was a world she didn't belong to. Crystal chandeliers, violins, champagne, and people wrapped in wealth like a second skin. Ava felt out of place, like a painting hung in the wrong gallery. She stood by the window, watching the night sky over the Thames when the host took the stage. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer said, "please welcome the man of the hour. Our guest of honor, the CEO of Hayes Global Holdings, Mr. Liam Hayes." Ava froze. The sound of applause faded into silence inside her chest. Her heart stopped, her breath caught. And when she turned, she saw him. He walked onto the stage, confident, calm, wearing a midnight blue suit that seemed to command the air itself. His voice was steady, deep, and unmistakable. "Thank you," he said into the microphone. "Tonight isn't about wealth. It's about humanity, about remembering where we came from, and the people who reminded us that kindness still exists." For a brief moment, his gaze swept across the crowd, and found her. Their eyes met. Time didn't just slow, it stopped. Ava's hand trembled. Her throat went dry. He wasn't a beggar. He wasn't the man she thought she knew. He was a billionaire. Liam Hayes, heir to a fortune. The same man whose story filled magazines and television screens. The man people worshipped in business circles. The man who had sat by her university gate in rags. After the speech, the ballroom buzzed with excitement. But Liam's eyes never left Ava. When he finally approached, she whispered, "So it was all a lie." He stopped. "Ava." "No," her voice shook. "You made me believe you were someone else. You let me open up to you. You prayed with me. You." Her voice broke. "You made me care about you." Liam took a breath, pain flickering behind his eyes. "I didn't lie to hurt you. I just needed to see the world without my name." He paused. "And then I met you." Her eyes filled with tears. "You could have told me." "I wanted to. Every day. But I was afraid the truth would change how you saw me." Ava looked at him. This man she thought she knew. This man she had fed when she had nothing. Now, he stood before her in a world of gold and power. While she stood there in a borrowed dress, trembling between love and betrayal. "I saw you, Liam," she whispered. "Even when you had nothing. But now, I don't know if I still do." And before he could speak, she turned and walked away. Her tears falling quietly into the glitter of the ballroom floor. That night, Liam stood by the window of his penthouse, staring at the city lights below. He had everything, yet he had never felt so empty. He whispered to himself, "You wanted truth, Liam. Now live with what it cost." Outside, the London rain began again. As if heaven itself mourned the distance between two hearts once joined by faith and kindness. Days turned into nights, and the echo of that ballroom confrontation refused to fade. Ava couldn't erase the image of him, the man who had once sat on the cold pavement in tattered clothes, now commanding boardrooms and headlines. Everywhere she turned, his name was there. Liam Hayes, the billionaire philanthropist who once vanished from the spotlight. Some called him a mystery. Others called him a miracle. But to Ava, he was a question she no longer knew how to answer. One evening, she sat alone in her small apartment, the city lights flickering beyond the window. She replayed every word he had said, every moment they had shared under the rain, every prayer whispered in silence. "Maybe," she said softly to herself, "he didn't lie to hurt me. Maybe he lied because he didn't know how else to be seen." She sighed. "And maybe I didn't see beyond the wound his truth left." Her chest tightened. So she did what she always did when she didn't have answers. She prayed, "Lord, if love is meant to heal, teach me how to forgive without losing myself. And if it's not meant to be, then let me walk away in peace." Meanwhile, across the city, Liam sat in his private office, The lights dim, the world outside blurred by rain. On the screen in front of him were photos from his foundation's new project. Hope Street, a shelter for the homeless built in memory of his late mother. But he couldn't focus. All he could see was her. Ava Morgan, the girl who gave him food when he had nothing. The girl who saw his heart when the world only saw his wealth. He stood, grabbed his keys, and whispered to his reflection. No more distance. No more masks. That night, Ava returned to the chapel. The same one where she once prayed for a beggar she barely knew. The same candles flickered. The same quiet peace filled the air. And there, in the doorway, stood Liam. No suit this time. No cameras. No entourage. Just a man, raw, unguarded, and broken by love. She froze. Why are you here? He stepped forward, his voice low. Because the truth isn't complete until you hear my heart. He walked closer, stopping a few steps away. When my father died, I lost faith in people. Everyone around me wanted my name, my money, or my power. So I went out there, as no one, to see if goodness still existed. And then, you found me. Ava's eyes glistened. I didn't find you, Liam. God did. I just followed his nudge. He smiled faintly. Maybe so. But that nudge saved me. Because for the first time in years, someone saw me, not the billionaire, not the heir, just a man trying to remember what kindness felt like. He took a step closer. I know I broke your trust. I know I should have told you sooner. But, Ava, everything I am now, every bit of hope I have, began the day you offered me that sandwich. Her lips trembled. You don't need to say that. He shook his head. Yes, I do. Because you reminded me that wealth isn't about what's in your hands. It's about what's in your heart. For a moment, silence filled the chapel. Only the soft flicker of candlelight glowed between them. Then Ava whispered, I don't know if I can just forget what you did. But I also can't forget what we shared. Liam's eyes met hers. Then don't forget either. Just let forgiveness be the bridge. Tears rolled down her cheeks. He slowly reached out, not touching her, just offering his hand, open, waiting. And in that holy stillness, Ava took it. Not because the pain was gone, but because her heart had finally chosen grace over pride. As they left the chapel, the first light of dawn crept across the sky. Soft gold breaking through the grey clouds. It felt symbolic. The end of a storm. The beginning of something new. For the first time, they walked side by side. Not as a beggar and a student. Not as a billionaire and a girl of faith. But as two souls healed by truth. Bound by something money could never buy. Unconditional love. But fate still had one final test for them. When Liam took Ava home. To meet his powerful, ruthless family. What awaited them would shake every foundation they thought was unbreakable. The black limousine rolled silently through the gates of the Hayes estate. A mansion that looked more like a royal palace than a home. Marble fountains whispered under the morning sun. And roses bloomed in perfect symmetry along the driveway. Ava sat quietly beside Liam, her fingers gently twisting in her lap. Her heart pounded as the car slowed before the towering entrance. She'd seen beauty before, in nature, in art, in prayer. But this kind of beauty felt heavy. Every brick seemed to whisper of power and pride. Liam glanced at her and smiled softly. You don't have to be nervous. She exhaled shakily. Easy for you to say. This is your world. He turned toward her. It's our world now, if you'll let it be. As they stepped out, two guards opened the door. A butler greeted them with a polite nod. Welcome home, Mr. Hayes. Then, his gaze flicked briefly to Ava. not unkind, but curious. Inside, the mansion was breathtaking. Chandeliers like frozen waterfalls. Paintings worth millions adorning every wall. Ava's steps echoed against the marble floor. Then came the voice. Liam. It was deep, stern, a tone that carried command. Liam straightened slightly. A tall man with silver hair and sharp eyes appeared at the top of the staircase. Richard Hayes, Liam's uncle and chairman of the family empire. Behind him stood Eleanor Hayes, Liam's mother. Elegant, poised, with an expression that could freeze fire. Richard's eyes moved to Ava. And who, may I ask, is this? Liam took a deep breath. This is Ava Morgan, he said calmly. The woman I love. A silence fell heavy in the air. Eleanor's eyebrows lifted slightly. You brought a student into this house. Ava lowered her gaze. But Liam didn't flinch. Yes, he said firmly. She's the reason I found my faith again. The reason I remembered who I am. Richard gave a cold smile. Liam, you're a Hayes. You don't bring strays into this family. That word, stray, cut through Ava like a knife. But before she could speak, Liam stepped closer. With all due respect, Uncle, I was a stray before she found me. The room went still. Eleanor's lips parted slightly, stunned by her son's words. He continued, his voice steady and low. When I lost myself, Ava showed me what it meant to live with kindness again. She fed me when I was nobody. She prayed for me when the world ignored me. If that's what you call a stray, then maybe this house could use more of them. Ava's eyes welled with tears. Eleanor slowly walked forward, studying the girl, her posture, her eyes, her silence. What do you see in my son, Miss Morgan? Ava swallowed. I see a man who needed love, not praise. I don't love his money, I love his soul. For the first time, Eleanor's expression softened. Behind that icy composure, something warm flickered, perhaps recognition, perhaps respect. She turned to her brother. Enough, Richard. Then she looked back at Ava. You've shown more grace in one sentence than most of our guests do in a lifetime. She smiled faintly. Welcome home, dear. Ava froze. You mean? Eleanor nodded. If my son found his faith through you, then you are already part of this family. Liam's relief was visible, the tension in his shoulders melting away. He reached for Ava's hand and whispered, Told you. That evening, the mansion glowed with laughter and soft piano music. For the first time, its halls felt alive, not just rich. Ava stood on the balcony, gazing at the London skyline as the sun melted into gold. Liam wrapped his arm around her waist. Do you ever think, he said quietly, how a small act of kindness can change everything? She smiled. I don't think, I know. He turned her gently toward him. Then let's keep living like that. Not just as lovers, but as givers. She nodded, tears glimmering in her eyes. Let's build something that heals others, like love healed us. As the night deepened, Liam led her into the grand hall, where their family waited to toast the new beginning. He raised his glass. To the girl who proved that love doesn't need wealth to be rich, and to the truth that God's plans are greater than any disguise. Everyone clapped softly. Eleanor smiled. Even Richard lowered his gaze in quiet acceptance. And Ava whispered a final prayer in her heart. Thank you, Lord, for turning my kindness into destiny.